Muito bom dia a todos. Gostaria de começar por agradecer à organização, à pessoa do José Sarmento, à Faculdade de Direito e aos seus centros, a possibilidade de estar aqui de novo para uma conferência tão relevante e tão interessante. And in spite of the Brexit, I know I must speak in English, so thank you very much.
We really weren't expecting you to do so, but thank you very much, especially for Lord Turner. It will be a blessing. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the invitation to address to this audience with some opening remarks on the important topics that join us here today. It is a very ambitious agenda to discuss the financial crisis and the pension reform in a single morning. However, I believe that the keynote speakers are up to this challenge. Often, when these two topics are discussed together, the discussion gravitates to the financial dimension, disregarding other social and economic dimensions of the sustainability of the pension system. I trust this will not be the case, since we are in good company today. We have the privilege to have Lord Turner as keynote speaker in this conference. He is an economist with experience like no other, including an important role in the United Kingdom's pension reform after the turn of the millennium. I take this opportunity to present a quote, if you allow me, from Lord Turner during the period when he chaired the Commission on Pension Reform in 2006. He said at the time, the problem for the United Kingdom, of course, is not one of fiscally unaffordable state pensions promises. Rather, the UK problem is that the state pension system would, under current policies, do not more than keep people out of severe poverty. The pension commissions predict that, if nothing were done, 60% of employees over the age of 35 were on course of having inadequate pensions. The Portuguese government does not ignore the adverse evolution of economic and demographic factors that negatively impact the pension system. This should be well assessed, clearly distinguishing structural and cyclical transformations, and be the strong focus of public policies. However, we refuse to assess the sustainability of the pension system, ignoring its social and economic dimensions. We refuse to neglect the important functions the system is intended to perform, namely security and adequate income in retirement, meaning sufficient income to prevent poverty and avoid abrupt changes in living standards in transition to old age. But going back to the financial dimension, the financial crisis impacted the Portuguese pension system in two major stages. The first happened when the financial crisis transformed into economic crisis, destroying jobs and eroding the pace of sustained job creation. During the crisis, 500,000 jobs were lost, a proportion equivalent to near 10% of the active population. The second moment occurred when austerity policies, added to the already severe unemployment destruction, namely policy measures that reduce wages and social benefits. The fall in employment, in combination with wage devaluation, negative net migration, and economic slowdown, impacts short-term financial indicators of the pension system. Fortunately, before the crisis occurred, we were able to reform the pension system without the same kind of external pressures and engaging all relevant partners and stakeholders. Several important changes were implemented at the time. I will highlight three of those. First, a sustainability factor was introduced linking pension levels to life expectancy. Secondly, pension entitlements started taking into account the complete 40 years of the contributive career. Finally, a new rule for annual pension updates was created, linking updates to both prices and the performance of the economy, the GDP growth in real terms. These changes had a profound impact on long-term sustainability of the pension system, which was widely and internationally well known. But let us return to what happened in recent years following the impact of the crisis. The social security system registered temporary deficits, mainly due to a fall in social contributions and increased expenditure with unemployment allowances. Despite projections by international institutions showing that the pension system remains financially sustainable in the long run, these cyclical imbalances were viewed, and are still viewed by some, as a window of opportunity for the defense of a paradigm change in the Portuguese pension system. Even some of those that consider the cyclical dimension of these deficits, which are now phasing out, argue that population aging alone justifies a structural change in the pension system, capping contributions and moving towards a partial funded pension system were the main proposals put forward for this structural shift. The well-known economist Nicolas Barr, in an IMF paper published in 2000, deconstructed the pension reform myth that, I quote, funding resolves adverse demographics. He showed us how funded schemes are not immune to demographic changes, and concluded in his paper that, first, in face of demographic problems, the key variable is the output. Second, the entire menu of policies which directly promote output growth should be considered. And finally, that from a macroeconomic perspective, the choice between pay-as-you-go and funding is secondary. Lord Turner shared similar beliefs, even before the global crisis fiercely hit financial market, leading to a drop in pension fund assets. He argued that funded private pension systems do not provide, and I quote, a complete and certain escape from the demographic challenge we are facing. He also wrote on an article for an IMF magazine that both types of systems are ultimately challenged by changing demography, and many of the supposed advantage of funded system can be achieved within a pay-as-you-go environment. For this government, for my government, the option of a paradigm shift with desocialized risks and increase income inequality is not on the table. This does not mean that private pension saving should not be encouraged or that there aren't important challenges to be addressed. The previous government was a strong advocate of structural changes and made constant threats over the financial equilibrium of the pension system. Despite this, The only change that was introduced in the past few years was a further increase in retirement age by aggravating the sustainability factor, and it shows that was only a concern with short-term fiscal imbalances without addressing medium and long-term sustainability. In contrast, the position of my government is forward-looking and takes a more holistic approach, quoting from the government program. The improvement of the sustainability of the social security system should take into account the retirement age and life expectancy, the demographic evolution in the country, the changes in the labor market, the income replacement rate, and the efficiency of benefit systems in terms of equity in combating evasion and fraud. This management should protect, in particular, those who are in more fragile situation and with less adaptability, as well as to encourage contribution payers with very long careers. This is the general framework of the tasks we are now undertaking in close dialogue with the social partners and relevant stakeholders. Social security was not responsible for the financial and economic crisis. However, it is strongly dependent on a sustainable economic recovery and positive developments in the labor market. Our ability to overcome the various economic and demographic challenges will require positive demographic flows in the long run. However, in the short run, this success will depend on the capacity to accelerate the return to the labor market of a larger share of the 1.5 million of people that are in the inactive population. It is also for this reason that the integration of economic and social policy is now, more than ever, so important. The recovery of jobs and earnings are at the core of social security sustainability. Yet, for the economy to recover, we must also address other issues at the supranational level, like that Lord Turner so clearly raises and discusses in this latest book, Between Debt and the Devil. What have we learned from the financial crisis? Are the post-crisis reforms regarding financial regulations sufficient to prevent further crises? How can governments find ways of promoting better allocation of credit creation towards productive investment? How can economies, such as Portuguese, deal with current high level of the debt and prevent economic stagnation? How can the Eurozone overcome its current challenges and structural fragilities? Can the Economic and Monetary Union be reformed to ensure prosperity to all members, reduce risk, and correct internal imbalances? Of course, all these questions are more difficult to find an answer after the results of the Brexit. But I think, in my opinion, that one thing is sure: we need politics that deliver results for the European people. Without that kind of change, the impact of the Brexit could be another factor for stagnation or even for another economic crisis. I return to my initial opening words. The topics of discussion chosen for this conference are vast and complex, but crucial for our individual and collective future, as well for the well-being of generations to come. I believe that Lord Turner, in his book, invites us to debate these questions openly, questioning old assumptions and considering less orthodox solutions. Let's follow his lead. I thank you all for your attention and wish you all a very interesting and productive debate. Thank you.